Hey hockey players, Coach Garner here from hockeytraining.com. In this video, I want to run you through some hockey evening rituals that you can use to finish the day off strong and prepare for a successful next day. In an earlier video, I talked about some things that you can use to have the best possible morning to set yourself up for the best possible day. But you can only have the best possible morning if your evening routine is in check, because that is what is setting everything up. So let's get right into it here. The first one is simply a to-do list. A to-do list is a real game changer for people. Now, I know some of you might be thinking that that sounds super simple, but never underestimate the effectiveness of simplicity. A to-do list at the end of the day really sets you up for an excellent night's sleep, but also for a productive next day. Now, how does it do those two things? Well, first and foremost, it's really going to help out with your sleep because all of your thoughts are now in the physical world. They are now on paper, and they no longer need to remain in your head. So what do I mean when I'm saying that they're now in the physical world? Well, if picture yourself if you've got a busy day tomorrow. Okay, well, I've got an appointment at 8:30 with my dentist, and then I gotta get to work by 9, and then I gotta train at this time, and I gotta remember to tell my colleague and email my other colleague, and then get this done because that's due at 6 p.m., right? There's lots of things that we all have obligations and responsibilities to, and when we take those thoughts into our head at nighttime, it reduces our sleep quality. Maybe you've had this happen before. You set your alarm for 6 a.m., but since you're getting up a lot earlier, you keep waking up and looking at the clock anyways, even though your alarm is totally 100% set. This is the sign of somebody who has anxiety. And you can reduce anxiety dramatically by creating a to-do list because now you don't have to remember anything anymore. You can go to bed, be totally relaxed, totally chilled out at the end of the day because you know 100% that you are never, ever going to forget anything because you did a full brain dump of everything that you need to accomplish the next day. Which leads me into the second point about the to-do list, productivity. Productivity is only governed by organization, and you don't want to start the day and then think about what you gotta do. It should not be that way. You should start the day knowing what you have to do so you can hit the ground running right from the word go. So when we create a to-do list, we empty our brain onto paper, which allows us to totally relax and fall asleep faster with better quality, but we also improve our productivity the next day in respect to meal preparation, supplementation preparation, when we're gonna train, what workout we're doing, our workout sheet preparation, but perhaps also the stuff in our work life and in our family life and the errands and the bills we have to pay and the things we have to drop off. All of this stuff goes on the list. So we reduce anxiety, improve productivity, and also improve our sleep quality, which has a massive circle effect performance all the way back to hockey performance at the end of the day. So a to-do list and or total brain dump on paper is an excellent thing to do before bed. Next, the 2-hour rule. The 2-hour rule is all about electronics, primarily email, cell phones, and social media, okay? These things create, which are too complicated to get into today, reward cascades in our brain, activating certain neurotransmitters that run antagonistic with the sleep neurotransmitters we need to be creating. Things like serotonin and melatonin are a couple of brain chemicals that are really important for lowering anxiety, allowing us to both fall asleep and allowing us to stay asleep. These things need to be up and in an adequate level. But if we're going through reward cascades and we're being excited by a new Facebook update, a new Instagram update, us posting, us getting a like on something, us getting messaged by somebody, all of these things are too stimulating is the correct word in order to allow for a good night's sleep and allow a proper wind down to happen at the end of the day. We need to wind down and we need to sleep well because we need to recover well if we're going to be better hockey players. So the 2-hour rule insists that you do no email, no social media, no texting, and absolutely no cell phone whatsoever within 2 hours of bedtime. And this is not just me saying this stuff. This is also proven within the scientific literature that certain blue lights emitted from our phone and emitted from our computer have a direct effect on reducing melatonin in the brain. Now, melatonin, if you remember, is one of those brain chemicals that I talked about earlier that's important for sleep length and sleep quality. Just a light entering our eye can decrease our own melatonin secretion within the brain. That's important to care about because that's something we are just looking at, and yet it's having a very real physical consequence within our body beyond all of the stimulation that we are getting from social media, email, and texting as it is. So eliminate that 2 hours before bedtime. Well, if you go to bed at 10 p.m. each and every single night, cell phone off at 8 p.m. No work email, no recreational email, no social media, no nothing. On the first night, you are going to find that you got a better sleep from it, period. I hear that every single time from my athletes who are ready to take on this challenge. I highly suggest that you take on the challenge. It can be difficult in the beginning. You might turn your phone completely off and then keep looking at it even though it's off, just as an automatic reaction. But I really, really insist that you try that out for at least 7 days. Your return on investment will be massive in the time it takes for you to fall asleep and the quality of sleep that you do have while you stay asleep due to a more optimal brain chemistry balance. Number 3, preparation. Okay? Just like I talked about in the to-do list, a next day productivity and success all begins with what you do the night before. And what you do the night before can set you up for success because you've already set the first action steps in place. A lot of times, motivation is the second process after action. You need to take action first. Action is the seed of motivation. Once you take your first step forward, it's a lot easier to take that second step. You just have to get that first step in. And if we can get that first step in at nighttime, then we are going to wake up and have a successful day the next day. So what does that kind of seed look like? Well, you can place all of your gym clothes out and ready. If you're going to train first thing in the morning, you're going to go for a run first thing in the morning, or you want to do hockey yoga, or you want to do a hockey mobility thing first thing in the morning, put a t-shirt and shorts and whatever gym clothes you have, place them out in a place that you know that you're going to cross, and have you put those on first thing in the morning each and every single morning. So those are already out there waiting for you and ready. You just got to take that first action step. That first action step's actually already been made the night before. You just got to take the second action step and see the thing through. So stay prepared. Have those meals ready. Have your gym clothes out and ready. Do anything that you need to do to prepare yourself. You can think about having a to-do list like step A, and then having preparation as step B, okay? Now we know what to do. So what's the first action step that we can take right now in order to make sure that we do what we need to do instead of what we want to do? These go hand in hand and are different conversations. Next is the environment. By environment, I specifically mean your sleep environment. Where are you sleeping, and what is the percentage chance of success that you are going to have an excellent sleep length and sleep quality within that environment? I want you to think about some things. Is your room pitch black? Does it have any light in it whatsoever? Are there any sounds happening within your room? Is your room of a certain colder temperature? These things all really, really, really matter. The body gets a much better sleep quality in a colder temperature room. The room should not be warm or hot in any way, shape, or form, and it should actually be quite chilly in your room in order to have an optimal sleep. That's a part of the environment. And also, it should be pitch black, like I just said. Why? Because light alone has been demonstrated to reduce melatonin secretion within our brain, to the point where we don't actually have to look at light. If we look at light through our eyes, it will decrease melatonin secretion. But what we've seen now within the research is that there are photoreceptors within our skin that can detect if we are in a state of light, and the skin will send messages to the brain, hey, it's still really light out here. It must still be daytime. So now's not the time to make melatonin because this person needs to stay awake because it's still daytime, right? It's not just the eyes, it's the eyes and the skin. So even if you have eye blinders on at a hotel or at home or whatever it's gonna be, if there are lights on in the room, then they can activate certain receptors within the skin that will ultimately lower melatonin, ultimately lower sleep quality, and ultimately decrease your recovery, which makes you a worse hockey player. Okay? These things all connect. Life, you're going to find all of these things find a way back to each other and find their way back to hockey, because hockey is such a demanding sport where you need to be on top of a lot of things, which is why to-do lists and preparation is so important to the entire picture beyond just the minute details of how much creatine should I have every day. What about my whey isolate shake? There are much bigger pictures that you need to be after, and an environment that is quiet, dark, and cold is the environment of success for having a good sleep. You want to think about it like you're going to sleep in a bat cave, okay? I've never slept in a bat cave, but I can assume they're pretty quiet, cold, and extremely dark, okay? Create your own bat cave and sleep in it every single night. Which brings me to the very last thing. We want to be setting our body up for sleep at the end of the night. So, if you are undergoing physical activity in the form of games, practices, or workouts, if possible, with your schedule, you want to follow the 3-hour rule when it comes to physical activity. In that, you should be done your most recent bout of intense physical activity before 3 hours before bed. So if you're going to bed at 10 p.m., your workout should be done at 7 p.m. Why? Because training in and of itself creates a hormone known as cortisol, which is important for the quality of training. But cortisol is also there to give us energy. That's what it does. It gives the body a lot of energy. It also does a lot of other things, but we'll get into that at another time. But one thing cortisol does is give us a lot of energy and helps mobilize fatty acids to be burned to supply fuel during exercise. It's very important. But the problem is it gives us energy and it has a half-life. So when we have cortisol elevations very high, well, it takes a while to come back down. It's not like you can just go whoop and right back down. That's not really how half-lives work. You want to have hormones going to be high, and then it's going to come back down, which is why you want to have a 3-hour rule. Because if we allow 3 hours, cortisol has had enough time to come back down and allow for an optimal sleep, and that's why it's a part of the ritual. Physical activity is a phenomenal thing, but when you can control your schedule, I understand some men's league players might play super late, or you just have to work out real late one day. Take into context that there's no such thing as right and wrong. There's things just on a continuum. Biology is never right or wrong. Biology always responds to averages, and everything is constantly on a continuum based on your training, nutrition, sleep, and lifestyle factors. And physical activity, excellent thing to do. When you can control it, stop 3 hours beforehand. This is the real meat and potatoes of what your hockey evening ritual is. Now, you may have heard the analogy before when you have a big jar and a professor is at the front of a classroom and he'll fill the jar with great big rocks and he'll say, "Is the jar full?" And everyone in the classroom says yes. And he says, "Nope." And then he adds a little bit of pebbles into the jar, and then little pebbles fit in between the cracks of the big rocks. And he says, "Is now the jar full?" And they all say, "Okay, now it's full." And he says, "No." And then he adds sand, and everyone thinks it's full, and it's not, because then he adds water after. And then the jar is very, very, very full at that point. But the analogy runs excellent within the hockey world, as you have to get your big rocks in place before you focus on your pebbles, sand, and water. Because the big rocks are going to have the biggest return on investment. These are your rocks, okay? These are the rocks I want you to focus on before you go buy a sleep supplement or go buy something or whatever it's going to be. A lot of people focus They major in the minors. Before you do any of that stuff, like don't go looking for a sleep supplement is what I'm saying if you're on your phone all the way up until bedtime. You're mowing the lawn while your house is on fire, okay? You're focusing on the wrong problem right now. Get your big rocks in place. These are your rocks. Follow these rituals. Start with just one, make it a habit, and then slowly start to introduce the other ones. Thanks for watching.